Hello, y'all. So we're also live streaming on the internet, so there's a bunch of people here with us you can't see. And at the end, we'll have a lot of time for Q&A. So I'll work to speak with you all for about 45 minutes and then have a good chunk for Q&A there at the end. And then the internet will be joining us for Q&A also. So, well, my name is Devin Alvarez, and I am the owner and founder of this company, Straight Hemp, and that's a picture of me there in our hemp fields in Colorado. I'm really happy because those plants smell really, really good, and I know they're going to help a lot of people. And we're actually cutting down our crop right now up there, and so we're going to talk a little bit today about my personal background and why I'm here. And I think it's probably a story a lot of us share, unfortunately. And we're going to talk about how these things are making a difference for people. And we're going to talk about some foundational knowledge that really is getting at kind of clearing up some of the confusion in the industry right now. There's a lot of new terms and concepts, and our goal is to really have you walk away from this learning something and understanding how to better utilize all the products out there, and also, you know, as well as ours, and get educated. And then also, if anyone here is open to it, we'll open it up for testimonials at the end. We had some really interesting things come up at yesterday's talk down in Greenville. So I'm a Southern boy myself. I grew up in North Florida, so being here with you today is really a dream come true. I grew up in Jacksonville, and I came from a long line of Southerners, long line of military leaders, all the way back to the American Revolution. And my career path actually did not start in hemp. It started in the U.S. Air Force, where I was in officer training at the U.S. Air Force Academy back in the early 2000s. And I was following in the footsteps of my fathers before me, and I encountered cannabis for the first time in Boulder, Colorado, and it opened up a new way of thinking about things. And you know, before I was training to kill men for the government and take over, control national assets and that whole sort of thing, and it just started seeming, it just seemed kind of crazy after a while, and not really what our tribe needed. When I looked around what was going on in our culture, it was clear that we needed to do something else. And cannabis and hemp are a tool that allow us to essentially, fight a battle of hearts and minds. I mean, that's really how wars are won. That's something that I learned working with those people. And what I saw happening in my own home and on the streets in Jacksonville was just total atrocity. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why we're here today. And well, the picture didn't come up for some reason. Let me pause this for a second. I'm actually going to need to pull up a different, something did not format. Hang on a second. Technical difficulties. So who here is currently using a CBD product? Almost everyone. Who isn't using a CBD product? Are you open to trying them? Maybe. Depends on how tonight goes, huh? Well, if I wasn't sweating before, I am now. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Oh, that's funny. Hang on a second. Thanks. Okay, let's start again. Hi, I'm Devin Alvarez with Straight Hemp. We're going to be talking tonight about CBD. Did you know that CBD helps with public speaking? Like 9 out of 12 people. And I can tell you right now it's working. So why are we here today? These are some of my family members. That's my grandfather there. He died of a drug overdose, alcohol. took his life and made a lot of our lives living hell. That's my stepfather, Randy. He was prescribed opiates for his back pain from the doctors, never told they were that addictive, ended up dying from a fentanyl overdose. 2016, left my mother widowed. That's my best friend Spencer there from my time in the Air Force. He died from a opiate and meth overdose. My stepfather, Billy, also died from a drug overdose. So it was really everywhere, not only in my family, but all over in the community I was from, you know, with the whole pill mill and the whole opiate epidemic and really just these bad drugs. And here are some numbers that are really shocking. You know, there are currently 2.5 million people diagnosed in this country right now with opioid use disorder. There are 80 deaths each day. I just got a call from my brother last week about some people on his jobs that recently died from some drug overdoses. And so it's not a good thing. How many people here have been touched by this? If you feel comfortable, raise your hand. Yeah, almost every one of us, right? And if we're all touched by that, all of us are touched by that. I mean, 2.5 million people is 10% of the adult population, you know? So we're going to talk about some things tonight that, you know, I'm not going to claim that this treats or cures any disease, but I am going to share some things that happen with my family that really are miraculous and can happen with others. CBD shows promise in helping to treat opiate addiction and other types of addictions and many other kinds of disorders. First of all, we'll talk about my mother. That's my mother there. She was addicted to opiates for 10 years. These were prescribed by the doctor, and they never told her how addictive they were. She fell into that cycle. She was a waitress, worked on her feet. She needed something to help her, and if she used marijuana or hemp or cannabis or anything, you know, she'd go to jail and lose custody of us, right? So she used these doctor-prescribed drugs, and it ruined her life for a decade. And I've actually not told this story, and it's important that I'm here to share this message with you today. And she used our products, and she was able to get clean, you know. And it's not just our products. There are other great hemp products out there that can help people in this way. And we just frankly can't wait on establishment thinking anymore. It gave us the opiate epidemic in the first place, and it's not solving our problems. So, you know, beyond this kind of message of, you know, despair, there's a message of hope in here. And my mother's a really wonderful example of that. She's been clean for over a year now, and it's totally changed. It's completely changed. And if you look into the research out there, CBD actually deletes two types of opioid receptors from the brain, the kappa and the mu receptors, right? So there's a lot of doctors out there in the medical addiction field, the addiction medicine field, that believe that, you know, once you have an opiate addicted brain, you're just always going to be that way. But I'm here to tell you, it's just not true. You can change it fundamentally, and CBD and hemp can help with that. And so, like I said, we don't have time to wait on establishment thinking. That's why I'm here today, fundamentally, is because I saw a need in our community, and I decided that I was going to go out there and get something for them and bring it back. And so that's why I'm really happy to be here in the Southeast in my home sharing this message. So a little bit more about me and my background. I just wasn't a guy that, you know, had a rough time with his family and decided to go grow hemp. I have a background in the military. But from there, I went on to earn a master's degree in biotechnology, where I worked for the Defense Department producing biofuels from microalgae and wastewater. And that really laid the foundations for my scientific training, which then led me to Colorado in 2012 for an American microbiology conference where I was talking about the microalgae work. And there I met with a Denver cop. It was 2012, and I was talking to him, and he's telling me all about the changing laws, and he ended up lighting a joint for me and having a conversation. I was just like, wow, this place is totally different, and I need to get up here and support these progressive policies if we're ever going to, you know, help to bring healing back to our people. And so I finished up my lab work, and I got up there just as quick as I could to get started in the industry. And the first place I started at was with a place called AgriCore Labs. It was a third-party testing lab, so it was essentially... It was when quality control was first meeting cannabis for the first time. And so we had the privilege of translating pharmaceutical quality control into the burgeoning new industry. And there was a lot of room to improve, we'll just say that. And it was through that experience that I really wasn't satisfied with the industry or the government's ability to deliver safe and effective products in a consistent way at that time. So I decided I'd just set out and start a company myself, and we could control the quality at the end of the day. So ultimately, Straight Hemp, his mission here is to help healing by giving everyone access to the best remedies nature has to offer, and hemp is really just the beginning of a whole plant-based revolution in medicine that we're going to see in the next decade. And we're fundamentally here to make a difference in as many lives as possible. And I'm pleased to announce that we've just formed a partnership with an addiction center in Jacksonville, Florida, to initiate clinical studies on detox, the deletion of these opioid receptors we were just telling you about, and some of these other comorbid factors that happen with those types of disease states like anxiety and insomnia. So it has huge potential for everyone. I know we've been talking a lot about addiction for a moment, but fundamentally there are a lot of kinds of conditions that should be considered, frankly. Now, once again, I'm not here to tell you it treats or cures or prevents any of these diseases. What I will tell you is that the endocannabinoid system, one of the primary systems that CBD works in, modulates and impacts almost every single human disease state. So the doctors at the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Pal Packer and Dr. George Kunos, tell us that the endocannabinoid system modulates almost every human disease state. So let me ask a question. From these things listed up here on the screen, who here has any one of these challenges or knows somebody with one of these challenges? Raise your hand for me. Yeah, every single person. Every single person. So fundamentally, comparatively to a lot of the current pharmaceuticals available for the treatment of many types of things, I keep saying things because I'm being non-specific here for the FDA, they're safe, right? CBD is safe, the terpenes are safe. We're going to talk about what terpenes are a little bit. What we're going to get into here is there's a lot more going on to this whole CBD thing than just CBD, and terpenes play a big role. So fundamentally, these compounds are safe. So today, we're going to give a primer on some basics. We're going to talk about what cannabis is, what hemp is, what marijuana is, what they aren't. We're going to talk about CBD, what it is, what it isn't, what we think it is, but what really is going on in there. When we say CBD, we're going to talk about some other cannabinoids. We're going to talk about terpenes. We're going to talk about something called the Entourage Effect. Now, just so I can get an idea here, how many of us have heard of the Entourage Effect? Could you raise your hand? Oh, a good number of us. We're going to talk about how to choose a product, how to use a product, and we're going to talk about some of the risks associated with the space right now. So we're going to talk about some quality control issues. We're going to talk about drug testing issues, and we're talking about drug contraindication issues. So let's start first with hemp and marijuana. So fundamentally, they're the same plant, period. You'll see these two pictures up here, and the one on the right or the left is hemp, and the one on the right is marijuana. And they look the same because they really are the same. The only difference is that THC content. So the Farm Bill in 2018 defined this in statute, and it's 0.3% THC. Now, the way that it's measured has a lot to do with that, and there's a lot of current regulation that we're working on to standardize a lot of those procedures for the country. But hemp is not marijuana, marijuana is not hemp, but they're both types of cannabis. And hemp, of course, is not non-psychoactive. It doesn't give you that high like marijuana does. Not that that high is bad or marijuana is bad, it's just different. One way I like to think about this is they're kind of akin to dogs, right? So marijuana and hemp are to cannabis as Rottweilers and Chihuahuas are to dogs. They're different breeds of the same genus, right? And just like dogs, there are a lot of different types of breeds out there. So there are many, many, many types of breeds of hemp, many types of breeds of marijuana, and we're really just starting to see what's possible. We're really just starting to see the tip of the iceberg out there. The United States is far, far, far ahead of many other, pretty much the rest of the globe in hemp genetics and marijuana genetics and cannabis genetics. And a lot of us don't know that, but we are. Now, we're behind the times on regulations. Canada's ahead of us, Israel's ahead of us, but we're going to catch up, and we're going to be able to take these heritage genetics from our cannabis breadbaskets in this country that have preserved them through these dark ages of prohibition and bring them into the light and fully utilize them. And that is what, so there's huge economic and therapeutic opportunity in there for the entire country and the entire globe. So let's turn our attention to CBD. CBD really has kind of two definitions. The scientific definition is cannabidiol. It is a singular molecule like this one on the screen if you're into organic chemistry. But when people say CBD in the culture, vernacularly, they're oftentimes referring to hemp essential oil products, period. And there's a lot more going on behind CBD than just CBD. And we'll talk about that. One of the other major components of these products are the terpenes. Now, there are other types of cannabinoids as well. So before we get into terpenes, I'll just explain those a little bit. So they have found they found over 100 different cannabinoids in the cannabis plant that are possible. There's over 700 types of terpenes possible. So, I mean, there's really a whole cornucopia of opportunity and possibility in there. And so THC is, of course, the other notorious cannabinoid that we know about. And it works together with these terpenes and other minor cannabinoids to produce something called the Entourage Effect. And we'll talk about that Entourage Effect in just a moment. But it's really a plant-based, it's a synergy. It's 1 + 1 = 3. So terpenes, you're familiar with terpenes. Everyone here is. They're in every type of plant and food. They're the smells, flavors, and aromas of life, and they have some profound therapeutic benefits as well. Has anyone here ever used aromatherapy? Yeah. So, that's what's working in aromatherapy are these terpenes. So if you ever get the essential oils from your natural food store or doTERRA or any of that, that is concentrated terpenes, and that's a type of essential oil, right? So cannabinoids and terpenes are all these essential oil fractions of these plants, which is where the flavor, the taste, and really the medicinal chemistries live. So some of the common terpenes present in cannabis that have some pretty profound effects are things like beta-caryophyllene, which activates your CB2 system and has a very profound anti-inflammatory response. Things like limonene, which has a cognitive enhancing effect. Things like pinene, same thing, cognitive enhancing. Myrcene is another really potent one where it is literally a muscle relaxant. It helps the GABA system release the tension in the muscles, and depending on how much you take, can help act as a sedative and help you relax and get to sleep. But these are not dangerous sedatives. These don't cause respiratory failure or all these other really crazy things that pharmaceuticals do. In fact, terpenes are generally recognized as safe according to the FDA. So it's these terpenes that are working with these cannabinoids to produce this entourage effect. This 1 + 1 = 3, or 1 + 1 = 6. It depends on the mix that you have in your batch. And so there is a lot of diversity out there in these products. They're not all just a CBD product. They're not all created equal. And just to kind of give you some visuals on this, this is called this graph right here. Let me just orient you to it. So on the x-axis, we have the dosing, the serving size. I'm going to pull this table out of the way so I can see everybody. Is that all right? So we have on the x-axis we have these serving sizes here, and on the y-axis we have health benefits. And we have a bell-shaped curve here. That represents your response to CBD isolate. And then we have this linear curve here that's up and to the right. That represents your response to a full spectrum or a broad spectrum product, something that's going to be producing the entourage effect. That is the entourage effect right there. And let me explain this bell-shaped curve, because this is something that we're not really familiar with in our culture. You know, where typically more is better. Basically what happens is you start taking a CBD isolate, pure CBD, that singular molecule we showed you earlier, and up until a point you're going to start getting a health benefit from that. But the more you take, the worse it gets, and basically you start eliminating the benefit that you're getting, right? So it's like it's taking nothing if you take too much. But if you have a good full spectrum or broad spectrum product, you're going to get this entourage effect. So you're going to get a lot further for the amount that you're taking. You're going to get a better health effect. And I didn't just make this up. I didn't just like draw this up here because we sell full spectrum products. This has been proven out by scientists, and it's been proven out in the marketplace anecdotally. This particular graph came from a study that a lady named Dr. Ruth Galili did. And we can share more of those types of sources later. So we've been talking about full spectrum, broad spectrum, isolate. Those may be terms you understand and know about. They may not be. We're going to cover those a little bit. But first I want to talk a little bit about understanding a label, because there is no standardized way to make one of these labels, and there are a lot of different formats in the marketplace, and it can be really confusing. And so you may be asking yourself, well, how do I know if I'm going to get this entourage effect from the products I'm taking? And there's a lot of answers to that, but the first place to start is to ask ourselves, let's identify it. Is it a full spectrum, broad spectrum, or an isolate? And what that means is full spectrum means it has some THC in there, and it has terpenes present, it has the CBD, and it may very well have other types of cannabinoids present. So it's really the whole plant being presented, right? So it's going to have THC as well as these other components. Full spectrum products will always lead to a stronger entourage effect. However, some people have THC sensitivities, either because you have never been exposed to it and need to become more familiar, or because you actually, there is a genetic component to THC sensitivity. It's for a very, very small part of the population, but it's out there. So one of the cons to a full spectrum product is, the THC and the strength, if you need to be wary of that. And then, of course, there's the drug testing, which we'll get to later. A broad spectrum product is something that has undetectable THC, zero THC or undetectable THC. And we'll talk about why we use the term undetectable in a little while. But fundamentally, it's the CBD, it's the terpenes, and there could also be other minor cannabinoids there. And then there's the pure CBD isolate. So that's like this powder right here. And it's supposed to just be a pure CBD compound, nothing else. No terpenes, no other cannabinoids. There is no entourage effect with these products. And of course, the pro is that you can get a higher CBD concentration in the products that you're taking. And if you have an issue where you're dealing with drug testing, this may allow you to bypass that, as well as the broad spectrum products may allow you to bypass that. So when it comes to understanding a label, you can look at that label and sort of, hopefully, if the company's done its job well, ascertain whether it's a full, broad, or isolate. And the way to do that is basically, so for instance, on our bottles, we list exactly how much CBD is in there right on the front. So how many milligrams of CBD. We also put how many milligrams of actual hemp extract are present. So for instance, in our 1,000 milligram bottle, there's 1,000 milligrams of CBD. There's 1,475 milligrams of hemp extract. So that 475 milligrams is the other component that has these other terpenes and minor cannabinoids. So if you see a label that has a total hemp extract or has another term like cannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, and that milligram amount is higher than the CBD in the bottle, then you likely have a full spectrum product. Now, we also add a THC disclaimer to our product. So if you have a THC disclaimer and you have that total hemp extract defined and your CBD milligrams defined, then you can be pretty sure that you have a full spectrum product. And then, of course, whoever you're purchasing this from, either on the web or at a retail situation, they will either be presenting their certificates of analysis, or the staff will have already reviewed those certificates of analysis. And essentially, that term is just a testing certificate, and you can actually see the various cannabinoids that are present in these products. So another, and something else to call out is CBD is sometimes listed as phytocannabidiol as well. So that's kind of the first place we start when we're looking at a label and understanding what kind of product we have in our hands. So fundamentally, the products are diverse, and each product can have its own personality, can have its own effects. So if you've tried one type of CBD product and it didn't work for you, you may need to reconsider how you're dosing, or consider moving to a different type of product, but don't give up on it yet. So fundamentally, what we really want you to take away is it's more than just CBD. There's a whole mess of other things going on in there, and working with a great store or a good producer to help you understand what you have. It should be very clear, frankly. So now let's talk about some of these other things that ultimately influence the product's personality, what ends up in that bottle. It's the genetics. So what we start with in that seed and what its potential is everything that we have to work with, fundamentally. And of course, how it's farmed has a lot to do with how it gets expressed. So the same strain grown in poor conditions or in a different environment can produce a different profile, different chemistry in the plant. So that's important to pay attention to. And then of course, how it gets harvested and processed has a lot to do with it too. So for instance, we hand cut everything and we hang it in a dark barn in Colorado to cure. And we don't, but other methods involve cutting these plants down, leaving them in the field to dry, where they can get weather beaten, they can develop mold, like this picture here on the right, and otherwise lose a lot of that content through the process. The terpenes are very volatile. The little glands on the plant will break off easily. So if you're not harvesting and processing it well, you can have the best genetics, you can farm it really, really well, but if you mishandle it, you lose a lot of that content along the way. And then of course, the extraction methods are also another huge component of this. There are currently 3 major types of extraction methods. There's CO2, which is what we use. There's alcohol-based extractions, which have been an herbal standard for many, many years, but they do not produce the same quality of extract that CO2 does. And then there are hydrocarbon extractions, things that use propane, butane, and other sorts. And those can be extremely dangerous, and those currently aren't legal to extract hemp with in Colorado. Let's take a moment here and talk about the extraction a little bit. So even if you're using a great extraction method like a CO2 method, you can still go wrong all kinds of ways along the process. So fundamentally, it's the heat and the temperature that you're using to do these extractions. And I kind of equate it to cooking broccoli, right? If you boil broccoli for an hour, it turns into mush, and it does not taste the same as if you steam broccoli for 5 minutes. The flavor profile is totally different. That flavor profile are those terpenes. So, when you cook something really heavily for a long period of time, all those terpenes get destroyed by heat and they volatilize and leave. And so they're not present in the mix anymore. So, how you use your CO2 systems, how you use any of these extraction systems along the way, really influence the taste of the product and these components that contribute to the entourage effect, whether or not they're going to be present there or not. The hydrocarbons, most folks don't advertise that they extract with hydrocarbons. They oftentimes try to hide it. And one way to look for that in a product is to look for a residual solvent analysis. So you can ask whoever you're purchasing it from, was there a solvent analysis done on this product? And the reason that's important is a lot of these hydrocarbons that are being used for extractions are not pharmaceutical grade. They're oftentimes industrial grade. They have things like toluene, xylene, benzene, and other components in there that are frankly carcinogenic and neurotoxic. So extraction is very important. And then, of course, how it gets refined is very important. So after extraction, there can be a number of different things that happen to it. One of the steps that typically always happens is something called decarboxylation, or essentially heat activation. For the cannabinoids to be in their most bioactive form, they need to be heated and converted into something, right? So THC or CBD, the plant really makes them as CBDA or THCA. It's a slightly different type of molecule, and it's not as active in the body. Now, folks do make raw formats where they don't do this, but we don't, because we just don't find them to be effective. And, but during that heating process, during that decarboxylation process, is another opportunity to either really get it right or get it wrong. You can cook off the terpenes and then go away if you're not capturing them, as well as you can start converting some of that THC into CBN. CBN is another type of molecule, another type of cannabinoid that can be quite helpful. It can help people get to sleep, deal with insomnia and other types of issues. But if you don't want it in your mix, then it can be a downside, and it comes from heating and heat converting that THC. So along the path of production, there's a lot of ways to do it really well and do it really poorly. And it's another reason why there's so much diversity in the products out there. There's a lot of different types of genetics. Every year we're going to see more new types of genetics. Has anyone ever been into a marijuana dispensary before? Yeah. So, how many different smells did you smell in there? About 50. Yeah. So those are all the different terpenes and all the different genetic possibilities, which are ultimately, the opportunity for therapy to be more custom fitted to people along the way. And then, of course, there's quality control. So how well is the quality control being done? Is it being third-party tested to ensure these production processes are in line with what they need to be? So here at Straight Hemp, we use essential oil cultivars as our genetics. So we use terpene-rich, cannabinoid-rich cultivars. These things were bred from marijuana strains and from lineage cannabis strains. I mean, cannabis used to exist with CBD and THC present in them. Then they were bred into high THC, and then they were bred back to their native format and back to high CBD strains. We're breeding that THC down. So rather than using a fiber or seed cultivar, which are totally awesome for making fiber and seed, but not great for making therapy, not great for making medicinal chemistries, right? So our essential oil cultivars have typically anywhere between 15 and 22% CBD by weight, comparatively to a fiber seed cultivar, which has 0.5% to maybe 5% by weight. So it's pretty dramatic, the difference. And then the terpenes in our essential oil cultivars are 2 to 3%, where in a fiber or seed cultivar, they are, not measurable, or up to 0.5%. So the oil weights are very different, and the types of oils that they're making are very different. So we start with really amazing genetics, and these are the genetics that I was talking about that this country currently has access to, that we're going to be able to continue to bring out in this nascent hemp industry. And then in terms of farming, we grow everything, like we like to say, beyond organic. We focus on building a living food web in the soil. We find that building a living food web, actually, that microbiome helps promote the terpene production and the essential oil production. And we don't totally understand why, but that's feeding these things compost teas really makes them sing, right? We water them with clean water, with snow melt. We grow them out under the sun, and they produce. And then in terms of harvest, as I was saying, we cut them down by hand and we hang them up to dry. Now we're working on some new top secret extraction methods that are currently being tested this harvest. We can't release yet, but here in the next couple months we'll be able to talk more about that, and we're really excited about it. So right now we're using a CO2 system, and we're using it in a subcritical fashion. So most CO2 systems are run as supercritical, which is not bad, but it's not the best for what we want to do. So we run our machines low and slow, and it's more of like an artisanal batch production. We're looking to capture all of that terpene out of there, and as much of the CBD that we can without pulling out all the other stuff in the plant. These plants have a lot of other fats and waxes and things that don't really contribute to the medicinal chemistry, but certainly make it taste bad. And then we don't want to volatilize those terpenes that we worked so hard to grow and bring. And so we run a subcritical CO2 extraction. And then for refining, all of our oils, all of our products are heat treated or decarboxylated, so they're in their most active form. We do not winterize our oils. That's another thing that folks do. They'll freeze it and filter it and get out all these little components of the plant, but we've actually found that those are quite medicinal and giving you more of that full spectrum. So we keep them in there. And then, of course, we go well beyond what is currently required in terms of quality control. We third-party test at the time of harvest. Along the way, we third-party test before these things go into our extraction machines, after they come out, and one post-infusion. So we're testing at multiple points along this pathway, and we're doing full panels. So we're testing for, I'll just put them up here. So we're testing for heavy metals, we're testing for solvents, we're testing for pesticides, microbial contaminants, cannabinoids, and terpenes as well. So the reason heavy metals are important to get tested is because heavy metals aren't good to have in your body, and hemp is a bioremediator, so it can be really excellent at cleaning up dirty soils, but it also means it can pick up a lot of stuff that's out there and get that in the product stream, so we don't want that, right? And that's another benefit to using an essential oil cultivar like I was discussing, because we get to use 5 to 20 times less material than folks who are using fiber seed cultivars. So the less that you have to run through, the less the opportunity of exposure is to various types of contaminants. We test for solvents along the way to ensure we're holding all of our partners accountable and nothing is leaking into the system. And we encourage anyone who's purchasing these products to look for these kinds of analyses to hold the folks you're working with accountable. We test for pesticides. We don't use pesticides, but there's always the opportunity for drift from another farm, and once again, just to hold everybody accountable along the way. And then microbial contaminants. We're testing for things like mycotoxins, as well as yeast and mold. And then, of course, for cannabinoid content, to make sure how much CBD we say is in the bottles in each drop is really there. And, this is not, this is seriously an issue in the industry, right? I mean, 67% of products tested recently online that were purchased did not have the appropriate amounts of CBD, right? So if you can't get the amount of CBD in your product right, which is the basic thing, there's all kinds of other problems. I mean, it really is like an iceberg. There's just like a whole issue going on in there. I mean, even the folks that really are supposed to know how to do this for the longest time out in California and Oregon and Colorado, I can't tell you how many millions of pounds of marijuana we had to seize and stop when I was doing quality control because they were laden with pesticides. It's a cash crop. Funguses like to eat it once it gets really hefty, and a lot of times people will go to desperate measures to protect that crop. And in fact, and so, I mean, mycotoxins is a really important one to test for, because if they do get moldy, like this one here, it's very easy for someone to run that through an extraction system. You'll never see that, but the types of mycotoxins that mold produces can be present. All right, so let's talk about some of the ways to take this stuff and how to use it. And so the first thing that I think is important is to set some expectations, because this is going to be a little bit different than traditional medicine, than working with Tylenol or something, take 2 and call me in the morning. I mean, it really depends on creature and condition. So who you are and what's going on with you, what your metabolism is, and then I'm sure as we build more data here, we'll be able to speak to more of these over time, but it's all very nascent, so we're all learning together, right? The good news is this stuff is very safe, so it's not like you're going to overdo it and have some big problem. So first of all, highly diverse products, as we were saying earlier. So if you haven't found something that works for you, keep looking. I'd encourage you to try our products. And then biofeedback and self-guidance. So you're going to be paying attention to your body and what it's telling you and how this is working for you. So paying attention to that and helping guide yourself. And then you're going to need to be patient, and you need to pay attention to what's happening. So there are 3 primary delivery systems. We're not going to talk about suppositories and eye drops and nasal sprays today. We're going to talk about the 3 major ways that you can get this. And we make all 3 of these delivery systems. So you have edible, which and you have topical, and you have inhalable. Now, our oil you can also use sublingually, and we can talk about that a little bit. But let's talk with edible. So the edible format is the longest lasting, so 4 to 8 hours of duration. and it comes on in about 30 to 45 minutes. So it's also the longest onset. It's really great for treating, persistent chronic issues. It's not great for acute relief when you need something right now. So it's best for planned relief. And then the topicals are kind of in between an inhalable and an edible in terms of onset and duration. So they're kind of medium lasting, 3 to 6 hours, and the onset can be anywhere from 10 to 25, 30 minutes. And then with an inhalable, or vapes, as I'm sure you've heard them called, it's immediate. I mean, we're talking within seconds you can see effect. And I know that you may have seen some headlines recently about this whole vape crisis and vape illness, and we can talk a little bit about that today as well, and I can explain to you why we have stuck to our guns and made a vape product. So the vape products, the inhalable formats, like I said, they come on the fastest, and they also last the shortest amount of time. So something to consider with the edibles is because they have a long onset time, it's really important to be patient and not just start taking more of them if it hasn't done anything for you in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, because that is a good way to take a little bit too much. And so the best thing to do, if you're not familiar with this stuff, is take it and wait an hour, see what happens, start at some of these lower dosages, and we'll go over some dosages here to start, and wait. So that's kind of an important caution with edibles. Another thing to note that I don't have up here is some studies are showing that if you take these products with food, particularly fatty food, it increases the absorption rate, can make them up to 5 times more potent. So if you just happen to eat, some some scrambled eggs and cheese or something, and then you just you took your CBD, it could have a different effect on you. And that's likely because it's helping deliver it to that upper small intestine area and helping it get past the stomach. So the topical, when using our topical, it's important to not rub it off your skin or be sweaty. And those types of things, if it loses contact with your skin, will affect the transmission. It's really awesome for treating tissue issues in specific areas. So, for instance, I was playing jiu-jitsu a few weeks ago, and I about ripped my finger off, and it had swollen up, and I was able to put the topical right on there, and within minutes I was seeing reduced inflammation and pain. But at the same time, it's systemic. It gets into your bloodstream and goes everywhere. So I've had folks that have used it to treat mood disorders and other types of things as well. And then, of course, the inhalable. And we can kind of pause here for a minute and just talk about our product for a moment. So we were really particular about the kind of vape that we made. And we got a lot of pushback for even doing this initially because it was hard to do. The CBD likes to gel up and crystallize and not work in this hardware, and that's why people cut it with vitamin E and propylene glycol and all that other weird stuff you've been reading about, because it makes it actually work in these systems. We have avoided that issue completely by using our own terpenes from our hemp plants as the carrier, as the thinning agent. So it's just hemp essential oil in there. There's nothing else present. Additionally, the type of hardware we're using is premium. We didn't cut any corners here. It's glass, it's metal, and the battery is premium. It always produces the same voltage consistently, allowing you to get the same type of temperature. That's all important. Oh, and also the coil inside is ceramic. So this is all very important because many of the hardware components in the vape world, such as the coils, are made of metal, which degrade and leach various alloys into the mix, which then get aerolized and you breathe those in. The plastics are generally non-FDA approved plastics. They can have things like phthalates in there, which are endocrine disruptors. And then, of course, the heating is very important because overheating these products can cause all sorts of weird heat byproducts to be formed, and it's essentially like inhaling a chemistry experiment. So we wanted to create a product that was pure. This is basically concentrated aromatherapy, right? So you're just inhaling an essential oil, in this case, the hemp essential oil. And we just absolutely had to make this. And we decided not to pull it down during this vape crisis thing because this is the kind of product people should be using as opposed to these other toxic products that are hurting them, you know? And if we don't provide them with a legal, accessible option, they're just gonna turn to the black market, and it's gonna continue to create these problems that we're seeing right now. So rather than hide in the dark and create more of a public health crisis, we've decided to hold our ground on this. And yeah, so that's what I have to say about vapes. And in terms of suggested serving guidelines, here are some numbers right here. The way this works is you just take your weight, your pounds, multiply it by the milligrams, and that'll get you an idea on how much you should start with. And you can take that 1 to 3 times daily. And we advise starting low and going slow. Unless you're into extreme sports, like I am. If you're into extreme sports, then you can try taking a heavier dose and seeing how it does you and determining whether or not you need to back off or go up. I would encourage you, though, if it's something that you're trying for the first time, to do it when you don't have an engagement to go to so that you can feel calm and study how it's going to work with you. So let's stop here. Does anybody have any questions over some of the things we've been going over? Yes, sir.
You said you get better absorption if you take the fatty foods.
Yes.
Does that mean you still hold it under the tongue first, or you just swallow it right away with the food?
Yeah, so you just brought up the sublingual application, and I didn't have a slide up here for that, but let's talk about that. So sublingual is more like inhaling in the sense that you get a much faster absorption rate and it's more bioavailable. So it can be very effective to sort of get more mileage out of your products. The one downside to sublingual, well, it could be 2 downsides. I mean, if you don't like the taste, that can be a downside. But the other potential downside is you don't get quite the standardized dosing. Oh, we didn't get him to say it on the mic, huh? Do we need to go back over it?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the gentleman was asking us if, are we supposed to take this with food to increase the absorption rate, and how does that impact whether or not we should take it sublingually? Is that what you're asking? Okay. Yeah, so the sublingual application can be a very good one to get more mileage out of your products, but it's harder to get standardized dosing that way because you have saliva production, you're going to swallow some of that. So if you're taking a larger dose, sometimes it's hard to determine how much ends up in your stomach and how much stays in your mouth. So that would kind of be the only downside, I think, to sublingual. But in terms of how that relates to taking it with a food, if you're finding good application now with a sublingual method and you kind of have it dialed in, I wouldn't encourage you to change that. And you can experiment with eating it with a meal and seeing if you get a better effect that way. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, wait. We're going to give you the mic so everybody can hear.
Then everyone can hear your question.
I wonder if one takes their dose when they're with food. I was thinking that it would dilute the absorption because it would have to deal with all the stomach acids and the food and all the things that are happening in the gut, which is why I really don't recommend capsules. But I'm wrong, huh?
Well, it's interesting, because different capsules are made differently. And depending on the type of food that someone's taking, that's going to influence how it's getting absorbed as well. So it's probably best for folks to, if they want to really standardize the dosages that they're taking, to take it on an empty stomach or a certain time after eating food, right? So they're not getting any kind of food interference, because the kind of food that you're eating and what you're taking, those are all things that can influence the overall effect of the product, right? So you might get a more profound effect, but you may not. Yeah, so it's going to depend on the types of foods that you're taking. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So on the subcritical extraction, do you reintroduce terpenes at all, or is everything that's present left over from that process?
Yeah, so we do. We do not use any other plant-derived terpenes in these formulations. We use except for the balm. Our balm has a number of other plant allies in there with it, but we use our hemp terpenes that come with it. So we capture terpenes when we decarboxylate. So we have a big recondensation tube that captures all that vapor. We recondense and we fold that back in. With the CO2 systems, we just run them at a certain temperature to not drive them off, essentially, and work to capture as much as we can. But we don't have a system to recapture them on the CO2 system. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I assume that's how you capture them for the vape?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the vape goes through another process. It's called fractional distillation. So there's another refinement step because we have to essentially pull the THC out of there. Because once it gets concentrated, it has a higher THC percentage. So we want to pull that back. And through that process, there's another condensing component that's capturing off gas. Yep. Any other questions currently? Okay, we'll keep going. So some of the side effects, now, these side effects are reported by the Mayo Clinic. They're in the Epidiolex safety trials. Epidiolex was that pure CBD compound that GW made. It's possible with other products, but we see these happen a lot with CBD isolates and high concentrations of CBD isolates. So with a full spectrum product like ours, you're not going to have to take a whole lot of it to get the effect that you need. But things that could happen are dry mouth, diarrhea, reduced appetite, drowsiness, and fatigue. It's possible. However, CBD is not really it's not a sedative. And once again, these are reported with CBD isolates primarily. And then there are some contraindications to pay attention to. So there are folks running around like, saying this is a panacea and you should take as much of it as you can. And we generally happen to agree. But fundamentally, if you're taking a medication where there's a warning about grapefruit, it should be a point of concern. You should just talk to your physician about that. It's not a showstopper. There haven't been any major adverse effects reported from this. But basically what happens is the way grapefruit interferes with certain medications, CBD does a very similar thing. And that can lead to elevated levels of certain drugs that one is taking in the bloodstream. So for instance, this has been demonstrated clinically with various blood thinners and anti-epileptics. So there's a lot of products that you can get in your natural food store that have, other contraindications. St. John's wort is a good example of that, natural herb that has some interference with SSRIs and other antidepressants. So fundamentally, if you're taking a medication that has a grapefruit warning on there, have another conversation with your physician. And if you need more information, there's a website, projectcbd.org, and we can provide that later. They have a whole primer on there that you can get and take to your physician to help facilitate a dialogue around that if you're unsure. And then there's drug testing. So this is another big one. All of our products, you will fail a drug test if you take them. They all have THC. Now that doesn't, if that's a concern for you, but there's an opportunity to possibly negotiate with your employer on that, we'd be willing to support that. We have successfully we've helped folks get approved at their doctor's offices, at like pain clinics and things, and in employment board situations, if, basically help make the case that they're taking a hemp product and not a marijuana product, and they'll allow that THC. I mean, that's not standard yet, but it is something we're seeing happen out there. And then, of course, there are products that are THC free, but I want to give you some words of caution around those, okay? So the way that they measure the THC, it doesn't really allow them to tell you that there's zero there. It tells you that there's none there up to a certain point, because below that they can't measure it, right? Now THC is a bioaccumulator. It likes to build up in your body, sticks to fat, and a lot like, I kind of liken it to a peanut allergy. So you can make a food in a facility that handles peanuts and not have any peanuts in the ingredients of your products, but still have an allergic reaction to that product. And that's because there's sort of a peanut residue present, right? So there can be sort of a THC residue present in THC-free products that isn't really accounted for, that depending on how much you take, what your metabolism is, and how sensitive the drug test is, can all lead to a situation where you thought you were taking a THC-free product and now you fail a drug test, right? And then there's also another side of this with some drug testing methods that are somewhat really outdated, but they use an acid in the process, right? And certain acids have been shown to turn CBD into THC. So the metabolites in your urine or wherever they're doing this, they can actually turn them into what they're looking for, right? And that's a whole nother side of this. And we've seen a case like that in Colorado with a friend who recently had to go to court for custody over his child who was taking CBD, and they drug tested it and turned it into THC. Now, he won the case, but it's something to be aware of that's out there. So drug testing is still a thing. And we really don't see another way out of this until one of two things happens. Either a company produces some clinically validated results that you will in fact not fail a drug test, or fundamentally we change the laws. And I recommend that we change the laws. Nevada recently passed a law that no discrimination for drug testing, and we can do the same right here and everywhere else. So that's mostly the bulk of the material. I'd love to talk with you all some more, though. What kind of questions do we have about the space? Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting to do that.
I wanted some clarification about the fact that there's THC or no THC in the vape pen, in the cartridge.
Yeah. So our vape pen does have THC in it. It's Delta 8 THC. It's not Delta 9. So it's a little less psychoactive. And of course, with the CBD load in there, it doesn't really have that psychoactive profile. But it is a full spectrum product. There is THC present. Yep. Yep. But it's still under that 0.3% threshold. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I get the hemp part, but then you see something that says hemp, and then it says CBD, and then some things say hemp, but doesn't say CBD at all. And it's just very confusing. Like, is everything with hemp have CBD automatically? And is there any difference between them? And then you got the milligrams, like one's at 3,000 and one says 25. I think that's about the dropper, but those two questions kind of about the difference between CBD and the hemp, and then the milligrams and how that ties in.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll back up a little bit. So you were asking, you see on the labels hemp, CBD. How do you know the difference? And then how do you determine the milligrams that are there? Yeah. So I can tell you for our products, we tell you exactly how much CBD is present right on the bottle, and in the supplemental facts panel. We'll list how much CBD is present, and then we also have another mark on there that's for total hemp extract, for that hemp extract component. And so if you see CBD, it should be referring to the actual amount of cannabidiol present, and then the hemp extract should refer to the CBD plus all the other components, so plus all the other terpenes and cannabinoids and other parts of the hemp extract. Now what that other hemp extract is can really vary greatly for all those reasons that we were discussing. So it's hard for us to really say ubiquitously in the industry, it is X, Y, and Z. But the CBD, so for instance, we have in our 1 ounce bottle 1,000 milligrams of CBD. We have 1,475, let's say 1,500. We have 1,500 milligrams of total hemp extract. So I subtract the CBD content from that, and that tells me I have 500 milligrams of other hemp extract components in addition to the CBD, right? And then in our products, we tell you very clearly how much CBD per drop is actually present. So we sort of dial it in per serving size for you and let you know. But there's so many products out there and so many brands and so many labels and formulas that there is a lot of loosey-goosey stuff out there, So if it's not clear, like if it's not very clear about what's there and you can't tell, you might want to move to a different product fundamentally, because that lack of transparency has got to be indicative of other things as well. So it should fundamentally tell you how much CBD is there, tell you how much hemp extract. The difference between the two are these other components that help drive the entourage effect. And then it should tell you very clearly how much per serving size is there. Now, some companies weren't putting the CBD on there because they were scared of legal action, so they were only doing the hemp extract, and they'll just have hemp extract and how much hemp extract per serving. They may have CBD present, or they may not, or it may not be, who knows what it is, frankly, so if they're not going to have it on the bottle, they should at least have it on the website for review, easily for you to tell, but if none of that stuff is present and they're not being transparent about it, I think it's a reason, probably a reason to keep going. Does that help answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So there's not like a
Oh, hang on, let's give you the mic. I keep forgetting to do that. We're just going to have you sit up front, Bonnie.
So there's not like on silver, there's a mark that says that it's sterling silver or whatever. So there's
Right.
not anything like that for these products, and it's really on the consumer to determine what it is that they're buying. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So for the first part, there isn't a mark per se like silver, where the total industry has accepted it, right? There are certifying bodies, so there are certifications that you can look for as a consumer. And then I'll say it's up to the consumer to really sort this out until the regulators get there. But also, the retailers that are currently carrying these products, if they have a good reputation, then they have that reputation to uphold, and they have done a lot of work already to vet great companies. So, going to a trusted retail partner that's in the natural space and working to, help you understand and kind of get to that knowledgeable place faster. So it's not necessarily totally up to you if you have somebody you can trust that's been out there researching that sort of thing. But other ways like marks to pay attention to, of course, are how the labels are laid out. So if they're laid out in a way that's very clear, like we were just discussing, that's a clear, that's an indicator. That's kind of a mark to pay attention to. And then, of course, there are these well, I'll skip the COA. So basically, there's the U.S. Hemp Authority, which we are currently under process for getting that certification. That's sort of a stamp that's out there that helps separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. Are they getting their material from a licensed hemp cultivation? Where's it coming from? It should come from some place that has a state license or USDA license, so that should be present. Also, there should be state health licensing along the way. So we have a Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment license for wholesale food manufacturing. We also have another one from the Denver Public Health. So there are these public health certificates you can look for as well. So, but until the FDA rolls out regulation or on a state-by-state level that happens, we're not really going to see a mark like that. Yeah. Does that help answer your question and sort of get us at some ways we can help find good products?
Yeah, no, I'm just, these CBD shops are opening up on every corner, and they can't all be selling the best.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. There's a ton to sort through.
I'm sorry, but I love you so much, and I love this
thank you.
product so much. So I just want to say to people that are here, if you have any question, buy straight hemp.
There you go. Yeah, if you have any questions, buy our products. Yeah.
Don't
thanks.
even look at the other ones. I mean, there's one or two that I would also recommend, but straight hemp is the best.
We did not plant her. I've never met her before, but that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
So I'm not sure in regards to your label or not, I can't remember exactly, but what significance, if any, does aerial parts play when you see that term aerial parts?
That is a artifact of old legislation. So in 2014, the Farm Bill stated, the language was kind of obscure, and one could interpret it to mean all aerial parts of the plant. So they were sort of like, you can't just take the little buds off, you got to take the whole kind of plant. And so it was more of a legal shield, so that if, the feds came in prior to 2018 Farm Bill and were like, we're going to shut you down, you got marijuana over there, boy, and we're coming to get you, we could be like, no, actually we're using the aerial parts. We're following you to the letter of the law. So that's really what that's about. And if the aerial parts here in this picture is literally everything above the ground. So, from right there up, that's what it's referring to. Does that answer your question? Yeah. We'll get you the mic here.
That raises another question. What part of the plant do you use?
Yeah, great. So we use the aerial parts, except we strip it down from the center stem. So basically what we do is we cut these things, then we hang them up, and then we come in and we shuck them, essentially. We shuck them down, and we take those axial branches, all those, all the other branches, and we send them off. And they get ground up, and then that pulp goes into the extraction machines. So the flower, the leaves, the stem, all that tissue is all present. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what I really wanted to ask you was, have you seen any results from people using maybe the straight CBD oil on the skin? And I'm thinking maybe skin cancer and stuff like that. I don't know if you can answer that or not.
Yeah, so I can't speak to whether or not it'll help with skin cancer, but what I can say is we've seen a lot of interesting things happen with the skin with folks. And our topical product, the balm, is really designed for the skin, but then if you don't want something that's strong, or hemp seed oil itself actually has some really amazing properties for the skin. We've seen some major skin issues cleared up with application of just hemp seed oil and nothing else. But we had a lady a few weeks ago that came to visit us at a talk, and she had showed us a picture, and she was just, from the face down, red and leaky, like oozy and puffy, and she was in a lot of pain. And she, rubbed the balm all over her skin.
From like a spider bite or something?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like
and
a
then
brown recluse or something. She showed us pictures. She looked like something like an alien. Like
Yep.
seriously, her face was crazy.
Yep. And so it's worth a try. I would say definitely try it out. In terms of dealing with inflammation and other skin challenges, there are components in that balm that are meant to help penetrate the skin and help bring that healing property into the skin. I'm hesitant to go too much deeper because I don't want the FDA to come after me. She was using the balm. Yeah, she was using the balm. So you can use the full spectrum oil. It just does not have the same penetrating power. So that oil's thinner and it kind of comes off, and so it's just not designed to get into the skin quite like the balm is. The balm's going to go a lot further. Yeah.
So the THC is what gives it the, I don't want to say hallucinogenic, but that's the stronger effect. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say stronger, but I would say that it is the component that can give it the intoxicating effect. So when you get high, if you get high or something, or you get stoned, or you get intoxicated from cannabis, it's really being driven by that THC component, right? So it has the strongest psychoactivity, right? But it also has some very incredible medicinal and healing properties. And so I'm not here to throw THC under the bus by any means. THC in small quantities really supports CBD's effectiveness in the body. Does that answer your?
Yes, that's the first part. So that being said, is your product, since it contains the full spectrum, can you sell that in any state?
Yes, that's right, because THC up to 0.3% is now legal. It is federally legal. Yeah. Now anything above that is not, and we have to be really careful about that because it's really hard to grow hemp under 0.3%. And those laws will likely change over time.
And you recommend the best type of oil is the one that does contain some portion of THC?
Yes, definitely. That's why we sell the full spectrum, because we find that has the greatest efficacy. Now, I will tell you, the only two places we don't sell it are Idaho and South Dakota, because they're still arresting people there. They haven't figured it out. Yeah. No, up here. Okay. We're running around with a mic. Yeah.
Just while we're on the THC subject, so that's what shows up in a drug test, for instance.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So how long will that 0.3% THC remain in your in your blood system to show up on a drug test?
I can't tell you that. I mean, I could tell you like back in college when I needed to like get a job, I typically like wait 2 weeks or, yeah.
So you think something as small as what this is would also probably take 2 weeks?
That's right, and depending on what your metabolism is like, and also what kind of drug test they're giving you. So it's really hard for me to tell. I can't tell you how to use it safely and pass a drug test. I really can't do that, and I'm not going to because I think that would be leading you astray. I think, either let's get a different job, or we will happily get on the phone with your employer or write a letter and try to help overcome those kinds of obstacles. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. Does Delta 8 THC show up on a drug screen?
It's a good question. Yes, it does. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. It really is the wild, wild west. We've got our health-centered store, and we're approached weekly with folks that have bought some isolate, and they're making up a batch of Lord knows what and putting a label on it. Can you speak to the more formal lobbying that's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And the light at the end of the tunnel for those of us who want to see more CBD products?
Yeah, definitely. So currently the two main regulatory bodies that are weighing in on this at the federal level are the USDA and the FDA. Now the USDA is like pro-hemp all day, rah, rah, rah. I got to meet their marketing service, which is actually the folks who brought you Got Milk and Beef, It's What's for Dinner, and they're like preparing to launch those kinds of campaigns for hemp, which is totally awesome. And they basically stepped in, and the general counsel at the USDA recently released his opinion statement, which is, hey guys, hemp is legal. Don't get in the way of interstate commerce. You can, so at the state level, it's possible for the state to create regulations that prohibit the production and distribution of hemp internally, but they cannot prohibit the interstate commerce, right? So that's what the USDA is saying. And then the USDA is currently working on, all the rules that we need, like how do we sample these plants? Do we take the top part? Do we take the whole thing? What does 0.3% mean? And what are the growing standards? What kind of pesticides you can use? All that kind of stuff. So all that's being worked out at the USDA, and they are huge fans of hemp. Now the FDA is a whole nother can of worms. I don't envy the FDA's position because they are sort of caught in a rock and a hard place. They have, the political will is stating that this is a thing and it's going to keep going that way. But they are like statutorily bound right now to follow their letter of the law. So they're going to have to either make a special exception or Congress is going to have to pass a law specifically to allow them to have a special exception. So they're just basically sitting on the sidelines, and they're asking that we meet FDA threshold requirements right now. So for instance, for us, that is, being an FDA registered facility, making sure we're doing adverse event reporting, working towards our CGMP standards. So that's what the FDA is looking for on a threshold basis, and they're fundamentally just collecting as much data right now from everyone that they can. They're trying to figure out how much is okay, how much is safe, really, if this stuff is in everything, if it's in our food and our water and, all of a sudden everywhere, what does that mean, versus just taking it as a supplement? Should we have maximum dosages and concentrations in bottles or not? And then, of course, they're trying to balance all of that with the fact that, there is a pharmaceutical company that has achieved this drug patent on Epidiolex and CBD. And of course, currently GW's position, the pharmaceutical company's position, is they want everyone to have their own swim lane. They want to have the pharmacy channel and have insurance paying for things and doing it that way. And they also want to support the natural product space as well. And currently, some of the best organizations to be a part of are the ones that we are. The U.S. Hemp Roundtable is doing a lot of incredible work to move the industry forward and help on a state-by-state level as well. And then there's Vote Hemp, and there's the Hemp Industries Association. Those are all organizations that we think are doing a lot. And then, of course, there's just state-level stuff, right? So, for instance, I think here in North Carolina, y'all are working on a smokable hemp law currently and evaluating kind of how some of this rolls out. And I can't necessarily speak to the state-by-state level issues at this current time, but if you're interested, I can certainly send you some information on that. You know, they're pushing the FDA hard because essentially until they roll out regulation, we're all sort of left guessing. We're left with me having to explain all of these details to everybody when, you know, we can get regulation passed with them and get that stamp that we need and sort of establish, you know, the line in the sand on what's good and what isn't. And in terms of, you know, basically what we're looking at doing is translating the quality control from the cannabis experiences in Colorado and Washington and Oregon to the hemp experience because the regulation's already all there. And frankly, the FDA, you know, sort of just needs to look up from their shoelaces and see, you know, the safety of this plant for what it is. I mean, if we were going to have any major adverse events, we would have seen tons of them by now. And, you know, it's going to possibly, you know, there might be a whole nother opportunity to create a whole new standard of medicine and pharmacy out of this at this point. And, you know, PHARM, you know, farming, because there's so many botanical solutions out there, and hemp can help us pave a way with the FDA to establish like a whole new way to develop things. That's sort of a blend between, you know, drug development and over-the-counter natural products, which it currently doesn't. And they're open to this sort of thing. We were able to speak with them at a recent Congress up in Colorado. So there's a lot going on, and we fundamentally believe it's going to come out that all parties and players can continue to move forward and that we are going to get the regulation in place that we need. Does that answer your question? Great.
So speaking of advocacy, do we have any champions up on the Hill? Are you guys, as a hemp growing coalition, cultivating someone to speak for us? Because we've got to come up with some advocacy also.
Yeah, so love him or hate him, Mitch McConnell's been one of the best advocates for the hemp industry coming out of Kentucky. Yeah, and so basically they have a bill that we have worked on writing, and when I say we, I mean the hemp industry, that we're working to get passed that would essentially create this space for the FDA to do its job and permanently remove that roadblock. And then you have organizations like APA, that's another one, the American Herbal Products Association, and they're all over there doing an incredible job of, you know, essentially moving the needle on all these regulations. So those are all good organizations to support. Thank you. Any other questions?
Then I'm just curious, say like how many plants does it take to make like that 4,000 milligram bottle? Just
Yeah.
for a price point, you know, because it's on the pricey side. Just curious as to how many plants go into that size bottle.
Gotcha. So, well, it's not a whole plant. It's a piece of a plant to make that, and it depends on how many. You know, it depends on how much weight. You know, how many pounds of essential oil you have on that plant. But what it sounds like is what we really want to talk about is pricing. Is that right?
Well, that, and I was just curious as to how many plants go into a bottle that size.
Gotcha. I don't know. I've never been asked that question before. You've stumped me. I'd have to do a little back of the envelope math. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. If I had to look at this, I'd say like, you know, like the top part of that plant right there, the cola, you know, on top, about that big. Yeah. I think eventually we'll be able to bring prices down, but right now, you know, there's a lot of things to pay for. We got to pay for lobbyists. We have to fight the government. We have to, you know, and continue to improve quality. And fundamentally, we would like there to be more access. And once there is more supply and we have, you know, the whole thing stood up, we'll be able to achieve greater economies of scale. Yeah. And then hopefully, you know, what we'll be able to see is sort of an over-the-counter approach, you know, over-the-counter medicine approach, and be able to get the price down. Yeah. So do you grow your own, or do you get it from somewhere else? Do we grow our own, or do we get it from somewhere else? Yeah, so we currently get it from our friends in Colorado. These are farmers that we've known for the last 5 years up there. I used to farm this myself. I farmed it in 2006 and 2007, and I did okay. You know, we were making okay plants, but I fundamentally wasn't the best farmer. I was better at a lot of other things. So, you know, what we're good at doing at this point is going into our farming partners and assessing their supply quality and ensuring it is what we want it to be, and sort of directing the development of those varietals to produce the kinds of plants we want to see in the marketplace. But fundamentally, one way to bring the cost down is to partner with others in the economy that are doing it right and bring them to the table, so we can all provide, you know, those pieces along the value chain to really produce the best possible product. So for instance, our farm currently, the main farm right now is in a place called Rocky Ford, Colorado. A group called the Keels are farming it. And we also primarily pull from some farms in Oregon. We're evaluating some farms in Kentucky. You know, we would be open to farms in the Carolinas. We think fundamentally it's very important to have farms in different places, because any year you farm, you know, you stand a 20% chance of total crop loss, right? So it's important to have a diverse mix.
So we're going to take a break for a moment to do our raffle.
Okay.
And then we want to move into testimonials, and then we'll do some more questions. In that order.
Thanks. Okay. All right, thanks.
So everyone get out your ticket.
Okay, I'm going to read the last three numbers. It's 076. 076. Oh, Renee in the back. All right. Okay, this one's actually 067. I'm just, yeah. That was 076. This one's 067. 067. Going once. Going twice. That's yours? All right. Zero 50. Woo! All right, thank you. So, something really interesting happened last night when we were talking down in Greenville. People just started standing up and telling their stories about their interaction with these products. So it's something that really gives us a lot of energy to keep doing this work. And if anyone here, does anybody here want to share how CBD has impacted their life? You will? All right, you'll start us off.
Well, CBD has impacted my life and my work life, because I work in a natural health food store. And learning about this and helping people has meant so much to me. It is incredible to have a person who can't stand up straight, leaning on their shopping cart, come over to me and ask me a few questions about CBD. Of course, straight hemp is one, you know, my first suggestion. And then have them come back a month later to get another bottle and say, and they're standing up and they're not leaning on their cart. It's just amazing the testimonials that people have given me in the store. It brings tears to my eyes. It's wonderful to be able to help people this way. And me personally, unbelievable. I mean, just aches and pains that I always had were from inflammation they have gone down. I can walk, I can lift, I can sit here with my neck up and not worry that it's going to be killing me. It's just, I just love it, and I love the heart, and I love the want to heal people that straight hemp reflects.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else have any great experiences? Doesn't have to be with our products either, just in general. We'd love to know what's happening out there.
I'll make this pretty quick. So for 20 years, I was a heroin addict. And I've been sober for almost 6 years, but luckily, thank you. But I wish this product would have been around a lot sooner. You know, it probably could have saved me a lot of heartache. It's just one of the many tools I have now, along with like a 12-step program, addiction psychiatrist, therapist, all of that. But it's amazing, you know, before, like with the anxiety and insomnia. Unfortunately, the only things that work I can't take, because I will take them all, you know. So this is definitely something, and it doesn't even, I talk a lot about it with my psychiatrist. It's not like I'm gonna sit there and drink the whole bottle. It's not even, it's completely different. But, and then, to not only be able to share that with people who are struggling with addiction, and I mean addiction or alcoholism, I mean that, who's not affected by that in some way, shape, or form today? So, especially now working at a restaurant and, just being on my feet completely all day, it's been nothing short of a miracle. It hasn't. And this is the brand that I do keep coming back to. I've tried probably 40, 50, but, you're always trying to find something better and, but we do always come back to that between me, him, and the dog. Everybody's on it. So, yeah, it's just a good product. It's a great product, and it's literally, I know plenty of people that take it for that same exact reason, so.
Thank you for being open about that
Yeah.
and sharing that. Anyone else want to share?
It's just more specifically about the product in general. Last year, my uncle was diagnosed with a stage 4 glioblastoma, and if you know what that is, it's a terrible brain tumor, and it debilitates your life very suddenly. And doctors, they try to narrow in on the medications and this, that, and the other, and these doctors have trained for years, and they can't get it right, can't get the medication right. So we turned to CBD. It was very natural transgression to everything else with it going on in the media. And the thing that I thought was the worst part about it was he couldn't figure out what to use. There's the gas stations selling it, like every multimedia marketing company is selling it, so like what's what. And at the end of the day, we couldn't even get his doctors to get on board with a brand and tell us what would be reputable and what to use. So one of the things that I found to be great about straight hemp was the transparency on the bottle and how easy it was to read, and it was straightforward. And like you said, if it's all there, then those are the questions that you need answered. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate that about the company and the brand as a whole.
Thank you.
We see folks with skin issues, anxiety. Can you not hear me? Skin issues, anxiety. And I will just reiterate, I tell folks we carry straight hemp, and that's it. And if there's a better way to create a CBD product, I trust straight hemp will do it.
Yeah, we're on it. We're on it, pushing the envelope right now. Thank you.
My mom passed away last fall, but I want to take the story back to November 2015 when she went to the hospital because she couldn't breathe. They thought she had pneumonia, but they never could clear it up. So then they finally, then in the MRI, found out she had a huge cancers in her left lung. It was actually bigger than my fist. And so that was in November. Nobody thought she was going to leave the hospital. We didn't think she'd live to see Christmas. They actually called the hospice into the hospital to get that all set up. Well, I own a health food store, so I started her own CBD right away, and she actually lived 3 years longer than we expected her to live. And I think most of that was CBD. And I think she might even still be alive today, but I went over to her house shortly before she passed away, and I saw a half a bottle of CBD, which should have been gone months ago, and she had just quit taking it, and so I think she was just ready to go at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Sorry for your loss. Well, how about that? It's helping people, So that's why I came out here today, is to get in touch with y'all and just see, what's happening out there. And, we'll share this information that we've talked about here tonight. You can find it on our YouTube channel, and we'll send this out via email as well. And we're going to continue to work to make the best possible products for y'all and keep pushing it forward.
I have one quick share. This past weekend, I was with a friend who's a chiropractor, he's like, I'd really like to learn more about your company. And he said, because he sees my Facebook post, he says, it sounds really like it's really high quality. So I told him a little bit about it. He goes, Bonnie, God, you know, he's a chiropractor, and he's my right hand has been bothering me so much I could hardly practice. I'm getting numbing in my fingers. He said, it's been debilitating for me. I've been trying all different product lines, different CBD products. So I had some of the salve in my purse. I said, well, here, let me give this to you, and why don't you rub some in your hand right now? I've heard incredible things about the salve. I mean, I've had people who have neck issues, headaches. I've been at the trade show at Expo East. I had friends using it, and they're like, 20 minutes later, they're like, it's gone. So I said, here, try this. And then we were just talking and hanging out with different people. And then 20 minutes later, he came over to me and goes, Bonnie, the pain is gone and the numbness is gone from my hand for the first time in like months. He was blown away. He wants to carry it in his practice.
That's amazing.
And I was just hanging out with him. I wasn't even like looking to make a sale. I'm just like,
Yeah.
So I love these kind of shares, you know, that I hear in my work with the companies. So
Thanks, Bonnie. And who was it over here? We hadn't tried CBD yet. You? How are we feeling about it now? Are you more open to it?
Maybe, but
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am.
random drug testing at my work, so
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've never been tested, but it's a possibility. So
Aha.
I worry a little bit about that.
Okay. Both of y'all have that issue? Got it. That makes sense why that'd be.
My husband had a traumatic injury about 6 weeks ago, and he's having some swelling, but it's the same thing. He runs the risk of the drug testing. He actually works in the agricultural industry, so.
Really? Man, isn't that just crazy that they can load you up on opiates and all this other very bad dope, but you can't have a plant? So that's going to change eventually. If you want to, just contact us after this, and we'll, if you want us to help write letters or anything like that, happy to do that. Yeah.
I like your new packaging.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a real bear to get done, honestly. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out tonight, y'all. If you don't have any other questions or anything, we can kind of break up. Yeah? Yeah, so we've been selling the straight hemp product family since 2017, August 2017. I have been involved in the cannabis industry in a badged and professional way since 2014, and we started farming hemp in 2016. So we've been in the space now for about I don't know, I can't even do math right now, but about 5 years personally, and then our team in general has over 50 years of experience in cannabis. So we have a lot of deep experience in that space. Any other questions? How was this? Was this helpful tonight? Awesome. Well, thanks for coming out.